When I was 13, we moved into a new plan of homes which had just been built on a spacious and vacant plot of land. The houses were beautiful, upper middle class homes, and our yard stretched behind us for hundreds of acres. On each end of the plan, there were woods as far as the eye could see, but our backyard stretched up and over a hill of expensive, treeless infinity. The first night, while snug in my bed, I heard a strange noise outside. Off in the distance, I peered out my window from my dark room and saw far in the distance, at the crest of the hill, a lantern seemingly floating in midair. And the sound strings, like a violin quartet. Figured it was coming from the neighbors until I opened my window. I grabbed a pair of binoculars from the den and went back. Through the binoculars, I could see it was a figure, lantern dangling from his arms, playing a violin positioned under his chin, just standing there, staring at our houses, or at me. It couldn't be. The strings chimed a cheerful crescendo at tasteful, stretched octaves like he was entertaining a gathering of drunk hooligans at a 19th century Irish crake. After about 20 minutes, the lantern slowly disappeared into the distance until it was gone. I just let it go and went to bed, though I was thoroughly creeped out. Several nights passed and nothing until Friday night. I was asleep when I awoke to a sound. I couldn't believe it. The same tune sang to me from outside. I opened my window, and this time I didn't need binoculars. There was a man in a suit and top hat and a full black beard, tap dancing in the grass and playing that song. Now at the bottom of the hill, just ahead of our yard. At 3 a.m., I went to wake up my parents, and then they looked. He was gone, and I swear that far in the distance I could see the twinkling of a lantern. Days didn't pass this time. I woke to that same sound of strings the next day, inside my closet. I ran out of my room to meet my parents in the hall. They'd been awoke by the same thing. The police were called. When they searched my room, they only found one strange thing inside. A lantern, but nothing else. And nobody turned up. After a thorough search of the house, this happened last night. What scared the living hell out of us, however, was that when they found the lantern, the candle inside was still burning. Tonight, I've decided to stay up all night. Closet door open and a door locked. All night, I've been watching out my window. On top of the hill is the glow of a lantern, being held by the same man. Only now, there's no violin. He's standing facing my house directly, staring into my window. I can't make out the look in his face. All I know is there's nothing I can do about it. The end. Just a few months ago, everything was normal. Every day was a usual, boring day with my parents, but I was happy. My parents were going out a lot late at night, but I figured they just need some alone time. One day they were out, and I was alone in the house. I went into the kitchen to grab some food. I heard some weird noises from the basement, but I thought I'm just really tired. On my way back to my room, I heard something again. This time it was loud and clear. I heard the crying of a little girl from the basement. I got really freaked out because I was always believed in the paranormal. Immediately, I thought it must be a ghost or something, and I ran back to my room and locked the door as fast as I could. I couldn't sleep, so I decided to wait until my parents had come home. It felt like hours, but probably they were back in an hour. They were trying to be quiet because they thought I'm asleep. Just when I wanted to open my door and tell them what happened, I heard my father say something that shocked me. He said, "Let's see how our little friend is doing in the basement." I was very confused and didn't know what to think. I heard them as they were going downstairs, so I just decided to follow. I was trying to be as quiet as I could. I slowly opened the basement door so I could hear them before going down. I heard my parents laughing and the crying again, but this time it wasn't as loud as before. I was more and more quiet, and the laughing got louder and louder. Finally, I gathered some courage, and I decided to check what's going on. I went down a few steps on the stairs, just enough to see a bit more. I will never forget what I saw. There was a little girl just barely living on the ground. She didn't have any clothes on, and she had several stab wounds. My parents were kissing each other, and then my father asked, "Are you ready for the big finale?" My mom just nodded her head and kissed him again. My father pulled out a drill from a toolbox and grabbed the little girl's neck. He looked at her for a few seconds. Then he started to drill a hole in her head. She didn't have enough life in her to scream, but I could see the suffering in her eyes. My parents were just laughing as my father continued to drill her head. The little girl died in a few seconds, and then I recognized her. I saw her on the news a few days ago. She was missing for 2 weeks, and the police was looking for her. I wanted to go back to my room to call the police. I was disgusted by my parents, and I never wanted to see them again. I slipped as I was going up the stairs, and they heard me. I started to run to my room, and my father was running after me. He told me to stop, and he will explain everything. I ran faster than ever in my life, and I got to my room. I closed the door, then I pushed my bookshelf to barricade the door. I dialed 911, but then I froze. I hung up the phone, and I didn't know what to do. I hated my parents, and I knew what they deserved. But they were still my parents. I was just sitting there for hours. It was really odd that my parents didn't even try to come into my room. One time, my father knocked on the door and told me to forgive them one day, but that's it. I only realized how long I was sitting there when I saw that the sun is rising. Finally, I dialed 911 again, and I explained everything. In 20 minutes, the police arrived, and I shouted, "I'm here. I'm the one who called you." They knocked on my door, and they told me it's safe to come out. I was waiting outside and 2 officers, while the rest was searching the house. I told them about the body in the basement, but when they came back, they told me there was 2 more bodies. They told me to stay strong, but it looks like my parents committed suicide. I realized my father knocked on my door to ask for forgiveness, because they already knew that was the only way out. A few months have passed, but I'm reliving the whole thing every night. I went to several psychologists, but nothing helps. At least I thought nothing helps. But now, I understand. There's only one way out for me, too. Everyone loves the first day of school, right? New year, new classes, new friends. It's a day full of potential and hope, before all the dreary depression of reality show up to ruin all the fun. I like the first day of school for a different reason, though. You see, I have a sort of power when I look at people. I can sense a sort of aura around them, a colored outline based on how long that person has to live. Most everyone I meet around my age is surrounded by a solid green hue, which means they have plenty of time left. A fair amount of them have a yellow-orangish tinge to their auras, which tends to mean a car crash or some other tragedy. Anything that takes people before their time, as they say. The real fun is when the auras venture into the red end of the spectrum. Every now and again, I'll see someone who's basically a walking stoplight. Those are the ones who get murdered or kill themselves. It's such a rush to see them and know their time is numbered with that in mind. I always get to class very early so I can scout out my classmates' fates. The first kid who walked in was basically radiating red. I chuckled to myself. Too damn bad, bro. But as people kept walking in, they all had the same intense glow. I finally caught a glimpse of my own in the window, but I was too stunned to move. Our professor stepped in and locked the door. his aura a sickening shade of green.